All right, what's up everyone? This is Don with Third Creative, and this is the walkthrough tutorial video for Work Zone multi-sport Photoshop template. In this video, I am going to walk you through all of the layers, cover the processes, and hopefully cover anything and everything that you might need to know in order to create the best images possible with this design. I'm going to be pretty thorough. Just keep in mind that everything that I go over with this 4x5 horizontal file is pretty standard across the board. Should apply to the other files as well, including the horizontal and the team. I will touch on briefly at the end the setup for the memory mate. If you've already set up any memory mates, you're probably already familiar with it, but we'll touch on it at the very end. Let's jump into this thing. I do recommend that you take just a second with any template to familiarize yourself with the layer folders. You can just turn on and off these little eyeballs here next to these layer folders. And even though they're labeled, it just helps give you just a general idea of where everything is. Might help you navigate a little quicker. Let's jump into the very bottom background layers folder. The way this one is set up, I decided to create two subfolders, one for far background layers and one for background layers. So if I turn off far background layers, you can see what that is, and then the background layers, you can see what that is. So let's jump into the far background layers and take a look here. We've got two shape layers at the very bottom. One says lower background shape, the other says upper background shape. If I turn off the lower, you can see what that is. Same with the upper. And this is where you would probably set up your first color changes, if at all. So if you don't want this black or this blue, it's very simple. Both of them have a color overlay. You can just simply click on the word color overlay. It'll bring up your layer style panel. It's kind of hard to see because it's gray on gray, but if you click right here in this little box, it'll open up your color picker. Now, if you already have a color code, you can paste it here. If you do not, you can use this to kind of move around and find a color you're looking for. If you want to get a little help on a starting point, if you just bring your cursor over, you can sample from any of these colors on the uniform itself, and it might give you a good starting point. Whatever color you go with, it might be a good idea to copy this code, and you can have something else pulled up. Maybe if you're on Apple, there's the Notes app or the Stickies app, but something where you can paste the code, where you can quickly access it, copy it, paste it in when you're changing colors of some of the other elements. Help speed things up a little bit. But very, very simple, changing the colors. Again, just clicking on the word color overlay, clicking on the little color swatch, identifying the color that you want to use, and copying the code so you can continue to use it and have it accurate and consistent. Next, we have a couple text layers. I'm going to turn off the subject image folder here so we can see it. We've got team name, which is this top text layer. We have sport, which is this lower text layer. I have them positioned so that they're kind of touching, creates a visual effect. But if you go with a different sport, you can double click on the T icon here to highlight your text. But let's say it's golf, for example. Well, golf is a much shorter word. If I turn on the subject, you don't even really see it. It's not a big deal that your subject covers part of it, but you want to be able to see a little bit of it so you can have a general idea. So you can scale it up either by going to your character panel, increasing the text size value, which this is at 147.04. You can increase it, or you could use your move tool, click on an anchor point. I'm going to hold down shift to maintain proportions and just drag and get it as big as I want. Now, once I have it about as big as I want, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see. I'm going to use my arrow key to move it up. Just, if you notice right here, this thin black line, I want to move it up until that goes away, which I think is pretty much right there. Maybe one more. There we go. Oh, I see a little bit of, yeah, perfect. So if you want to maintain this look, you want it to just barely be touching the line of these two background shape layers. Same thing applies to the team name. You can scale it up or down depending how big or long the team name is. So it takes up the correct amount of space, but that kind of helped a little bit. Let's go back to volleyball. There we go. Changing the colors, very simple. If you highlight any of these text, you should have an option at the top here and then also in your character panel. But very simple in changing the color. Let's back out of that. Next we have lower and upper slashes. So if I turn off the lower, you can see, so basically we've got this and we have up here for the upper. Now you can use more than two different colors. You can do this any way that you want, but if you notice, if I zoom back in, the upper slashes are the same color as this lower shape, background shape. And the color for these lower slashes is the same color as the upper background shape. And so that's where you would want to just copy and paste those codes to keep them the same. But you'll notice that there's color overlays on both of these. They are text layers, so you could actually turn the color overlay off and change the color, you know, this way. But that's up to you. You can leave it on and just use the color picker or the color overlay. There's also a drop shadow that you could turn on if you want to create a little bit of a three-dimensional look. You can kind of see up here. Those are turned off by default. You really shouldn't have to do much with these. If you did need to make a little bit of extra room for the word golf, you notice I made it really large. You can select the layer, use your arrow key down, and make a little bit more room if you feel like you need it. If you really want to get into it, you could highlight all of this. In your character panel, you can control the distance in between each character. In this case, it's a backslash that makes that effect. So if you reduce this value, they'll be closer together. If you increase it, they'll be further together. More than likely, all of that won't be necessary. And that's pretty much it for the far background layers. Let's close that up and open the background layers. So again, turning that off, you can see basically what we're getting is from here to here, and then also this upper little diagonal section. So let's go to the bottom. So we've got lower background shape. If you turn it off, you can see what it is. Again, it's a color overlay, so double clicking on the word color overlay, clicking on this box and pasting your color code in so that you can keep it consistent. It's got a little error message there, but we can make that go away. Let's see, so we've got our lower slashes and it's exactly the same as the ones that we just went over. You can move them up, move them down, you can scale them larger, smaller, change the color with your color overlay, but really it's just a matter of changing the color and pasting your color code in. Here we have lower shape, change color, so you can see there's one more right here. So this one's blue and so is the one behind it. You can keep that, you know, those two colors the same, or you can experiment depending on your look that you're going for. Next we have background vignette, and so if you see, if I turn that off, it just kind of flattens everything out This kind of has more of a spotlight effect. It's an exposure layer. It's 100%. If you double click on this, let's say for example you're going for a really bright white background, maybe white on like a light gray. This may be too much, and so you can play with these values. Maybe move this to the right or darker. You can adjust it if you want to. Completely optional. Next we have our upper shape. So if I turn that off, you can see this is this section here, and it's all the same. Color overlay, just double clicking on the word color overlay and pasting your code in. This one is a shape layer, but it's all it really is this very thin stroke outline. It's like an accent color, and so you would just change the color by double clicking on the word stroke, clicking on the little color swatch box, and pasting your color code in that you've already predetermined. Next we have our upper text plate, and so you can figure that out, but it's behind the year. So there's a couple things you want to do here. You would change the stroke outline, this blue outline, just like we did with this line here, just by clicking on the word stroke and changing the color, pasting your code in. And then of course the actual color of the shape, you would double click the word color overlay and select the color that you want. Very simple, very easy. It's just a matter of working your way through here and just pasting in the right color code to keep this contrast that we already have set up here. And that's it for the background layers. There is also a background paper texture, which is set to a multiply blend mode. So I'm going to just zoom in quite a bit. It's very subtle, but you can see it's there. There is a texture here. If you turn it off, you lose that texture obviously, but the texture actually darkens everything a little bit. So you can see it brightens up if I turn that off. So it is actually making all the colors a little bit darker while it's adding that texture. So we'll go ahead and close that up. Next we have our subject images. So obviously this is a sample subject you would turn off, and you would place all of your subject images in this folder. There is a drop shadow. So that's what's on the folder, excuse me. So that's what's creating this. If I turn it off, you can see that goes away. You can double click on the word drop shadow and play with these values, the opacity, distance, size, etc. But I tried to set it to an amount that I thought would look good. It just depends on how dark you want it or bold you want it, but it is adjustable. Next we have our lower color fade over subjects. So rather than putting a gradient mask on the subject where it fades the legs, I did a color overlay. So whatever blue or whatever color you're using in place of this blue area, you would more than likely paste that code. So real simple, double click on the color swatch to bring this up and paste your code right here. But if you turn it off, you can see a little bit different look. It's up to you if you want to leave that on or turn it off. Next we have our lower foreground layers. Let's open that up and take a look here. If we go to the very bottom, we have our bottom shape. If I turn that off, you can see what that is. And so again, it's just a matter of pasting your color code in. You've got two color codes that you're working with and just pasting the appropriate one into each. Next we have a lower nameplate. So you can see if I turn that off, it's this section right here. So two things to do here. There is a stroke outline, so you see this brighter blue, and it's just like all the other stroke outlines. Simply double clicking on any of the layer styles will bring up your layer style panel, and you can pick which one you want to adjust or edit. Clicking on the color swatch and just pasting in the color code that you want for that stroke outline. And then of course the color overlay itself is the same process. Very simple. Next we have, I like that, we have our backslashes. And really it's just a matter of changing color. Now it's up to you. You notice what I did here. I did a very subtle contrast of the same color, lighter gray, darker gray. And so you can try doing the same with whatever color you're using here. I just personally feel that if you get too crazy, it gets a little too distracting. You know, you don't want the name to be, you want it to pop. So I think less contrast is better, and you're still able to maintain that look. And then next we have our lower thin accent line. So just like at the top, we have one on the bottom, and all it is clicking on the word stroke and pasting your color in. Very simple. So you just work your way through. We're pretty much almost done. Again, we have another paper texture, and this is just to apply to the foreground layers here. We have some vignettes. We have both an exposure and levels. So you can play with these if you want. They're subtle, but if you turn them off, you see what happens. It just doesn't draw you in quite as much. We also have a very mild color grading, color lookup or LUT. And so you can see up here it's crisp warm, and I only have it at 10%. So if I turn it off, you can kind of see it loses some of its contrast and some of its warmth. So it's up to you if you want to leave that on or off. You can also increase or decrease the opacity value that you see here is 10. But I will say if you get too carried away, like if I were to put 30 in, it starts to look a little too grungy, a little too contrasty. So just be careful with that. Next we have our foreground text layers. I'm going to open that up. Pretty self-explanatory. We've got our year. So if you were to change that, very simple, just double clicking on the T icon. You can, in your character panel, increase or decrease the distance in between each character if you want to, using this field right here. And then of course changing the color. You can do in your character panel or by highlighting your text. What is this? The contextual bar? I can't even remember what we call that. And then of course up here in your toolbar, I guess you would say. Name. So you got first and last name. So it's all in one. One thing you can do if you're doing this manually, if you want a little extra, is highlight just the last name. And if it works, you can do two color. I do that often. If you're using automation, you want to keep it all one color. But that's pretty simple. Changing the color just like any other text layer. Same thing with our subtext, which is for senior. If you're using automation, you might not have that on there, or you'll just rename one of these layers and just use it. But otherwise, I have junior, sophomore, freshman all built in. You can change it to say anything you want, and then I also have their jersey number here. Now their jersey number has a stroke outline, which is in white. So just like all the other stroke outlines, just double click on the word stroke itself, click on the color swatch, and paste the color that you want in there, or choose the color that you want. And then just like all the other text layers, in your character panel here, or double clicking on the T to highlight the text, you can come here, or you can come here. So many different ways to change that color. And again, it's just pasting your code in. More than likely you'll just have two colors you're working with, unless you have, like, say, white. This is technically three, I guess you would say. But just having those and pasting them in, once you get the hang of it, you go through it pretty quickly. And that is it. I tried to keep that short and concise, but also stay super thorough like I always am. Let's jump over the memory mate real quick and we will wrap this up. So with the memory mate, you have two folders that are red. One is for your subject image. If I open that up, you can see we've got our subject image here. You can have your subject image placed on the right like it is by default, or you can have your subject image placed on the left. The next folder, you have insert 5x4 team image here. So basically you want to start with your 5x4 file and you want to create your team image, save it as a JPEG. So for demonstration purposes, I'm going to pull this up here. Let's see if I can get it. Well, there we go. Well, let's just click and drag. Gosh, sloppy. There we go. Click and drag, let go. Now you could hit the check mark, but before we do, I'm going to scale this down by clicking on a corner anchor point, dragging towards the middle of my screen. I'm going to line up the edge with that. I'll come over here, do the same thing, get it relatively close, doesn't have to be exact. Position it about the same. You can hit your check mark. Now we have our player on the left, so I'm going to go ahead. Oh, it didn't end up in the folder. So let's click on our team image here, drag it down, let go. Let's turn off the one that's the sample that's in there by default. Now with this, we can use our arrow key or just click. I'm going to hold down shift, click and drag to the right and position it. Now doing that covers up more of the team name, but you notice you have it right here anyway, so it just really doesn't matter. So you can set it up to the left or to the right. But really the main thing is just remember to build your team image using the 5x4 horizontal file, save it as a JPEG, and then when you open your memory mate, you just drag and drop it just above this one. And then you can scale and position your team image wherever you want it or however you want it. And again, you can have your subject images on the left, or you can have them on the right, which is completely up to you. And that's it. So I zipped through that, but it's pretty thorough at the same time. If there's any, actually, one more thing. I have this color grade option up here. You'll see there's a mask on it. So a few things you could do when you create your team image, you could turn, it also has this color grade. So if you use the color grade on your team image, you can turn this off, save it as a JPEG, and then when you drag and drop it in here and position it, you can keep, basically the idea is to not apply the color grading twice or double it. And so by inserting your team image in here that already has it, and then this has it as well, it doubles the effect. So there's two things you can do. I'm going to hold down shift and I'm going to click on this layer mask to disable it. And so now it's going to apply to the entire image. And so if you did save that team image without it, you won't get double the effect. However, if you did save your team image with it and you don't want to double the effect and you still want to use this color grading option, if you scale and position it exactly like the sample image is, you can leave it alone. If you position it larger, smaller, or off to the right instead, what you can do is right click on this layer mask and select delete layer mask. Now open up this folder that contains your team image. It's either Control on PC or Command on Mac. If you hold it down and just click right in there, you'll notice we've got a selection around our team image. Now if you come up to your color grading layer and select it, make sure you have it selected, come down and just click on this layer mask icon. It automatically applies it, but it's actually backwards. So one last step is to hold down Control or Command and hit I to invert it. And now you'll have a new layer mask. So I really hate that it has that little extra level of complexity I think really the easiest way, if you can remember, is to save an extra copy of your team image without the color grading, just so that that one could be used for your memory mate. Of course, you always have the option to just turn it off on everything, and then you don't have to worry about it. But I wanted to explain it, and hopefully it makes sense and didn't just completely go over your head. But that's it for real this time. So if there's anything that I didn't cover, anything that you still need help with or need to know, I am available and accessible. You can email me at don@thirdcreative.com, and I'll do my best to get back to you as quickly as possible. That is all I have on this one. It's time to move on to the next one. So until the next one, thanks for watching, and we'll see you.